Hello, this is Charlene. We are going to work today on simplifying quadratics by square roots. The first thing I want to consider on this right-hand side, after I put everything on one side of the equal sign. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's subtract 55 from both sides here. 55. So these will cancel, and then I end up with 2x squared minus 64, and that is equal to 0. So the first thing that I do notice is that it does fit this pattern where I have x squared plus or minus some constant number equal to 0. So it does fit that pattern where it only has two terms, it has no plain old x term, and then I can consider first, can I take the square root of 2x squared? Can I take the square root of the 64? And is it a difference? And that is true. It is actually a difference. It is a difference between two numbers. I can take the square root of a 64, but I cannot take the square root of the 2x squared. I cannot take a square root of a 2, not easily. It's not nice and neat. It'll be some messy decimal number, and that does not qualify. So it disqualifies me from being able to use the factoring pattern for difference of two perfect squares. So therefore, I need to consider an alternative way to solve it, and that's why we're going to look at it over here and use the alternative method. So again, we will rewrite that as 2x squared minus the 64 is equal to the 0. Okay, so I have two terms, binomial, no x term. I have determined that I cannot use the difference of squares, but I am going to simplify by getting the square root by itself. So at this point, I will just add the 64 back to both sides. So plus 64 plus 64. These will cancel out. That will give me 2x squared is equal to a positive 64. And at this point, we call it simplifying quadratics by square roots, but if you notice, we are just simply doing order operations along the way. So at this point, I'm going to divide out that 2 on both sides, and these 2's will also obviously cancel. I've got x squared is equal to 32. So now I need to consider, how do I get rid of that squared term? So I am going to use the square root in order to eliminate the square. But if I do square roots on both sides, on the answer side, I need to write plus or minus. This square root and this square will cancel each other out. I am left with x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 32. However, we need to simplify that radical. So let's consider how to simplify that radical at the moment. We're going to do radical 32, and I can break that down into, let's see, what can I do? 2 times 16. Okay, at that point, if I'm paying attention, I can recognize, I can actually take the square root of a 16. So that makes my life simple if I can see that up front. So I'm going to pull a 4 out to represent that 16. But the 2, again, is problematic. I cannot take the square root of a 2 without it being a really messy decimal. So that 2 is going to stay inside the house. So I'm going to pull a 4 out to represent the 16. I'm going to leave a 2 inside the radical by itself. And that is what radical 32 is going to be equal to. So therefore, my final answer becomes x is equal to plus or minus 4 times the square root of 2. That is how we solve a binomial quadratic that contains no x term, but it does contain an x squared plus or minus some constant number equal to 0. This is the format that we may see, and this is how we would go about solving this type of quadratic. Okay, hopefully that helps you go through the process. Come back real soon, click on the like button, click on the subscribe button, and we'll see you back soon.